Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Audit Committee meeting holding tonight, the 26th of November. The first item on the agenda is the election of the chairman. Does anyone have a nominee? Thank you, Councillor. Yes.
Yes, Councillor Christine Cherry. I would like to propose Mr. Paul Lucraft, please. As
Cherry. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'd like to second the proposal.
Thank you. We're now going to the vote with a show of hands. Can members indicate whether they're in favour or against? Well, we'll start with being in favour. Can members put their hands up who are in favour of the nomination? That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you. Councillor Lucraft.
Okay, thank you, members, for that. Obviously, we've got a very busy agenda this evening, so thank you for your patience in getting started. Any apologies for absence? I think everybody's here, actually. Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Can we agree by affirmation the minutes for the previous meeting, the 16th of July, please? Agreed. Thank you. There are no urgent items of business. So item 6 is the financial statements, 2023. I hand over to Louise Duffield to walk us through, please.
Thank you, Councillor Lucraft. And I think just wanted to start by sort of thanking the committee. We've been on quite a journey over the last few months as we've understood how the resolution of the backlog in local authority audits was going to be dealt with. I think we've worked really constructively with EY as a partner to get to this position. And in having this committee on the 26th of November, we're comfortably in a position to meet the backstop deadline of the 13th of December. Many local authorities are not in that position. I would also note that although we're in a situation where we're having effectively a disclaimed audit, and we've talked quite a lot as a committee about what that language really means, I note that other local authorities have still got comments in their reports from their auditors, and we don't have any comments. So I think we should again be very pleased with that as an outcome, and I feel that that's a strong endorsement of our accounts. The papers are really long, but effectively, just to remind you, you've seen quite a bit of it before. So at Appendix A, you've got Kevin's report, which we'll invite him to talk to in a moment. You've also then got the value for money report that you previously saw in March and the accounts that you've previously seen. So they're really there as background papers. Appendix D is the letter of representation, and depending on the committee's vote this evening, the proposition would be that the chair and the 151 officer sign them if the recommendations are agreed, and that means that we'll definitely meet the backstop position. So, Chair, I don't know if you want to invite Kevin Souter from EY to introduce his report.
Yes, thank you, Louise. Kevin Souter, please talk us through.
Thank you very much. So, good evening, members. So, yes, I'm here this evening to present our completion reports for the year 2022-23, and that's Appendix A to Agenda Item 6, which starts on page 11 of this evening's papers. So the key headline of our report is that we do intend to disclaim the audit for the Council. We are disclaiming the accounts as a measure to clear the backlog that's built up over the last few years in public sector auditing and accounting and auditing. And as just sort of previously been introduced, that has been discussed in previous meetings of this committee. We now have a legislation in place that lets us move forward and start to clear that backlog. And so by the 13th of December, you will, fingers crossed, committee decision pending for this evening. I'm not going to jump the gun, but decision pending on this item, you will have that, your accounts approved, you will have that audit report, and you will have met the backstop deadline. The backstop does mean that inevitably a large number of audits will not be done in time to reach an unqualified conclusion, and that's the position for this council. And I want to emphasise two main things. This is not unique to this council. There will be hundreds of delayed local authority audits that are going to be disclaimed by either the backstop date of the 13th of December or the next backstop date of the 25th of February. It's not something that is specific to you. I can't emphasise that enough. And secondly, a disclaimer is not saying that there's something wrong with your accounts. To say that something is wrong with your accounts, we would need to do a full audit. And the point is for us as EY and our strategy is that we have not had the resources to be able to do that full audit. Hence, our disclaimer says, and the basis of the disclaimer says, we have not been in a place to be able to do sufficient work to draw a conclusion. So we are definitely not saying that your accounts are wrong or they are misleading. We are saying we haven't done the work to be able to give an opinion. What our completion report does cover this evening is a number of elements that we are still required to tell you under international standards of auditing or by the NAO's Code of Audit Practice. So, for example, they tell you what the risks would have been had we been doing the full audit and the materiality we would have worked to. But again, ultimately, we have not done the work to be able to respond to those risks, so we don't then have findings in relation to them, we don't have a typical list of amendments we may be asking you to make or considerations, because, again, to emphasise, we haven't been able to complete that work. We have been able to complete our work on your value for money arrangements, and this remains largely unchanged from previous years. And the main aspect of that is, of course, the headline message that we haven't identified any major concerns about your arrangements, so we have no matters to report by exception. We previously reported that information back to you in March of this year, and the content of the report in front of you this evening has no changes from that previous report. So I wasn't going to go into any details of that aspect, but as usual, I'm going to be open to questions at the end. Having undertaken that aspect of the audit, we do report to you on a continual basis that we remain independent of the council. I think it's always still an important measure to communicate that the role of the external auditor is to remain independent, not to have any conflicts or breaches of ethical standards, and we can affirm that to you this evening. The last aspect to draw to your attention regards the fees. So a number of authorities have been asking me about what is happening about the audit fees, and unfortunately I can't give you a very definitive answer here. That's the remit of public sector audit appointments, who set the fees for the year, and the regulations that set up public sector audit appointments really didn't envisage this sort of scenario happening. So they're in a very difficult position to try and work out how to devise a solution for this and how to set a fee for the year, which remains ongoing. So I have no ability to be able to comment on what this fee will be or when that will be set, unfortunately. So that concludes my presentation introduction to our report this evening, and I will be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Souter. Any questions from members? Councillor Cavallo.
Thank you, Chairman. Just dealing with the audit fee and the fact that you won't be able to complete all of your audit work for the 22-23 year, is any of the audit fee likely to include an element of being able to cast an eye over the closing position when you do your audit for the 23-24 year?
So the fees will remain separate. As I say, I don't have any update and know what can happen on 22-23. For the 23 audit year, that will come to your next committee, I believe, with my colleague Hassan Rahim, and we'll be presenting the report on that, so he'd be in a much better position to give you an update on 23-24.
Any other questions? Matthew Cornish, Councillor Cornish.
Thank you. Can I just ask a brief question on the, it's on page 59 of the report on the specific items and reserves.
I think that would be best directed to section 151 officer, because page 59 of the pack is the statement of accounts. That's not my report.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Rachel Jarvis.
Question.
Thank you. I just, sorry for skipping ahead. I just wanted to check on the, there are some obviously quite large specific transfers, and I just wanted to understand, are they fully spent down? And if not, what happens to any residual amounts of those things, like the martlets, like Clare Hall feasibility studies? Are they spent in their entirety? That's all I wanted to ask.
So actually, I'm going to take this if that's all right, Councillor.
Yes.
So I think it's important to remember that this is a point in time. So this is the 22-23 accounts. So we're several years back, and probably the more up-to-date position that you'd have on this would be the budget that we agreed in March this year. And then in terms of the capital items, you've got a current capital programme in your pack. So all of this is quite historic now and has moved on quite a lot. So, for example, you picked up the Martlets Temporary Urban Park. That's in the capital programme sort of down there.
Okay.
Hopefully that helps.
So we'll come back to that, I think, partly in the further item in the agenda later on when we're talking about the capital strategy. Yes, so you might want to ask something when we get to that item. Yeah, item 8. Any other questions for Kevin Souter? Okay, I think in that case we move to the resolution on page 9. So I'm going to ask members to vote on their screens, please. Those in favour or against? Okay, that's unanimously carried. Okay, so I think we now need to sign off the documents, don't we?
Apologies, members. A very quick interlude whilst we get this signed.
Okay, this is a letter of representation.
Okay. I feel like we should be giving out pens, shouldn't we, as souvenirs? Something important as this.
And that is done. There's one more for you to sign. I'm just going to move that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. So I think we have to hand these documents to Kevin Souter, but thank him for coming and presenting his report, and let him go and catch a train. Thank you very much. Oh, the car. Thank you. Very good. Okay, so we move now to item 7, and I'm going to invite Louise to talk us through that.
Thank you. Yes, just a couple of remarks before I bring in Joseph. I think we remain really pleased to be working with Ada and Worthing, who for a good fee give us an excellent service. And again, we've seen, as we saw in the outturn, really good maximisation, working closely with Rachel, particularly on those in-year movement investments. I think it's a really good value for money contract for us. And I think I hope that what the committee have seen in terms of where we've put our counterparties and where we've moved some of our investments and how we've set out in the strategy, that we are having regard as much as we can to that ESG point, so that we're making the best investments that we can that deliver the yield but also fit with the values that this committee has expressed. So I suggest we bring Joseph in, and between us we'll handle any questions.
Thank you, Louise. Sounds like maybe we should review the fee. So I bring to you a couple of reports in one package, really. The first report is the Treasury Management Strategy. Stress these are two separate reports, so bear that in mind. For convenience, we've brought them to the same audit committee, and that fits in with the timetable. Anyway, so we have the Treasury Management Strategy, which sets out the strategy for 25-26 and beyond. I've met with Rachel, and we've discussed the counterparties and the counterparty limits, and we didn't really see a need to make any changes for the coming year. So, and then we have the report in Appendix 2, which is the mid-year report, which is backward-looking and reflects the activity during the first 6 months of this year. And I stress, the figures in these reports are a snapshot in time. Some of the figures in the mid-year report you'll see reflected in the Treasury Management Strategy. In both reports, there's a number of prudential indicators that we're required to report on, and that's required by the SIPF code. But they're not necessarily all relevant to Mid-Sussex, because, as you know, you're a debt-free authority. And then I'd like to say about the MRP. We've talked about this before, but just to reiterate, the MRP is a set-aside for borrowing for the Orchard Centre, but that borrowing is internal borrowing, so it's notional, if you like, although it does impact on your revenue budget. So with the mid-year report, one thing I would draw out, I think, is that there is, at the moment, and has been for several months now, quite an active lending and borrowing market with the local authorities. And we made good use of that, I think. If in the table of investments, you'll be able to see some of the local authorities there. And so it's around about, it's 22 million, which is more or less a quarter of the portfolio. Now, we've talked about investments with local authorities before, and there is due care, due diligence process that we go through when looking at those. And it has worked out quite good. Like I say, it's an active market, and the rates we're able to achieve through those are, largely speaking, exceeding what we would get from banks or building societies. And I think they fulfill a role in that they are social investments. They're within the UK, and I think that satisfies some of the concerns that members have. So I think that's everything I wanted to say about this, really. Oh, there's one other thing which I would say is in the economic update, that the figures that the forecast we've been provided with on the rates, they came in after the report was published. So because as you know, there's been a number of events, the election in the US, the budget, you know, the UK budget, and the last cut in rates from the Bank of England. So that forecast is somewhat out of date, but basically rates will fall at a slower rate than anticipated in this forecast, which for mid-Sussex is probably good news.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Saville, for that report. Any questions from members to Mr. Saville? Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chairman. On the tables, I understand all the ratings, the AA, single A's and plus. When it's unrated, are those just not reviewed, or will they be reviewed at some stage? Because some of them are unrated.
As far as the building societies are concerned, some building societies just aren't rated. They've chosen not to do that. And the criteria that is set is those over £1 billion worth of assets. And that is the strategy. It's been like that for some time. The other unrated counterparties, well, you can call the other authorities unrated. In fact, no, they're not. They are AA minus, which is just across the board rating
Can I just ask Louise Duffer to comment to that?
I think, Rod, you're asking, is there anything to worry about? Yes. Yeah. and no, it's to do with the way the building societies are formed and the type of organisation that they are. So they don't sit neatly under that, let's be rated by a Moody's or whatever type thing. So no, it's nothing to worry about. They wouldn't be in here if we didn't think they were safe counterparties.
Thanks.
I noted your comments about other local authorities, and I think I made it 35 million from the tables on pages 210 and 11. But do we have a general perspective on lending money to other local authorities, given the concerns about local government funding and solvency?
Thank you. So I think from our perspective, investing with local authorities is a safe bet. Fundamentally, they can't go bankrupt. I think Joseph's talked about the due diligence that we do on a case-by-case basis if we choose to make an investment. I think that there are two other really key points. So we have looked strategically at our approach, and so we're trying to get that balance between risk and yield. And as Joseph has said, local authorities are providing a really strong yield at the moment. And as I said in my opening remarks, I think for us to find high yield, low risk investments that meet our ESG goals, local authorities really are one of our strongest bets.
Thank you.
Can I just add something to that? I mean, if you look at the local authorities we have there, largely speaking, they are county councils, we've got police and crime commissioners, so they are, pretty much every authority in the country has difficulty balancing their budgets. One of the things we haven't changed in the strategy is that we've kept the limit at 1 year. So my view is that most local authorities have done what they need to do to get a balanced budget for 24-25. The problems, are down the road, 25, 26, 26, 27. So that you know, doing a 12-month, 3-month, 5-month, 6-month investment, I don't see as being a problem.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions from members? No? Okay, so can we move to the resolution to approve this on page, page 173, is it? That's unanimously approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Saville, for coming. If you want to leave, you're welcome to. Okay, so we'll move to item 8, which is the capital strategy, pages 213 to 224. And can I invite Louise Duffield to talk us through that?
So I think, members, we've talked over the last couple of years about the capital strategy and the associated programme being a multi-year and dynamic programme. So what you've got here is the strategy for your consideration with no material variations from the strategy you approved last year. Appended to that, you've got the programme, which is, of course, in nature ever-changing. And so some of the movements since the last programme you will have seen are, for example, the addition of an extra year of disabled facilities grants, some of the movements around the DEFRA grant from simpler recycling, and some of the already agreed Parks Master Plan work that now has the 106 that's come through. So the main item of business really is the strategy, but obviously the programme's there for you. As we are in the process of setting a budget, any new schemes will come to full council as part of that budget setting process. So everything in here is sort of previously agreed, and now the funding's come forward. Very happy to take any questions.
Yeah, so any questions from members? Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for coming in too early there. I just wanted to just make sure, I suppose, that it is on the programme, unfortunately, because I think there are some big transfers that obviously are in the plan already. I suppose I just wanted a bit of clarity and understanding of what happens if there's any material changes there, or if, because at the moment I think there was some anticipated spend this year, but it looks like, I'm talking about the martlets, there's going to be some anticipated spend next year. Does that essentially carry on? And if not, what happens to that?
So I think I'll try and answer that in a few different ways. So if we think about this paper and the paper before having a relationship with each other, what we're trying to do in the capital programme is always understand when the bills are going to come in, because we want to invest the money and make money off of it. So that continuous movement, it shows healthy programme management, because it means we're in constant dialogue on those schemes. The martlets one is quite interesting, because when that funding was originally sought, we were perhaps in a different place, and we might have different views around meanwhile use and timing. So for that reason, we've profiled it into next year to enable conversations to happen about what's the best way to make use of that money. I don't want to preempt members' thoughts on that, because that could go in a number of directions. It's not just going to disappear, though. It will always be there. And in terms of the governance for these variations, sorry, my final point was that they went through Cabinet at 1:45.
Any other questions? Yes, I think just ask a question about the longer term approach, really, because obviously we're investing our money relatively short term, aren't we? So we don't really have a liquidity issue, but are we actually taking enough advantage of potential longer term interest rates or other? Is that
So I think Rachel and the team have done an amazing job over the last couple of years of constantly refining that position, and I think as we think more multi-year, we are getting better and I think we're doing very well. You can see in our healthy treasury management returns of getting that exact balance, because we never want to be in a position of not having the liquidity, but we want to invest for as long as we can. So it's a continuous job of work, I think is what I would say.
try and hit a moving target?
Yes.
Very good. Any other questions? Councillor Carvalho?
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the investment in the waste programme and with regard to the investment into the lorries, is there any certainty of government funding for this, or is this still to be TBA?
So simple recycling, despite having simple in the title, has many ramifications. And so we've got lorries, we've got bins, we've got depot capacity, we've got revenue implications. So we have had what in the totality of that impact is a modest amount of money from DEFRA about bins and vehicles, no indication of support on revenue, and none of that capital infrastructure work. So we've had a bit, but it doesn't really touch the sides, to be honest.
Right. Okay.
I think that's something where the council probably wants to try and establish more clarity from government before kind of pressing the go button on some of the investment that it really wants to do, because obviously there's a big expectation in the public and there's a sort of onus on the council to invest in it, isn't there? So it's kind of, we've got a challenge there, really. Okay. Can we move to a vote on the recommendations on page 213 then, please? Okay, that's unanimously carried. Thank you. So we'll move to item 9 and invite Louise Duffield to walk us through that document as well, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So just again, to give us, just to orientate ourselves contextually, this committee has approved the strategic risks for the year 24-25. This is to consider the policy with tracked changes, hopefully really clearly shown, that will then enable us to write 25-26 risks, which will come here. But just for your reference, the current in-year risks are appended to the paper. So there aren't significant changes to the policy, but I'm really happy to walk through any questions members have. And you'll probably remember we did quite a bit of work last year on refreshing this.
Okay, any questions from members? Okay. I know you've we've updated the policies to probably be a bit more learn from what's happened in the past and try and improve the process. Is that a fair reflection on what's been done? Okay. So I think if there are no other questions, we move to a vote on the recommendations on page 225, please. Okay, that's unanimously carried. So we move to item 10, which is the Audit Committee work programme for next year. Can I invite Louise Duffield to talk us through that, please?
Thank you. So thank you, members, for getting through 244 pages of really important work this evening. Really helps us with the budget setting process. This evening we went through the process for the 22-23 accounts. The backstop deadline in legislation is 26th of February, I do believe, for the 23-24 accounts. And although we have worked very hard with EY, they have been quite clear with us that in the context of the whole country's audits that they're doing, they aren't going to be able to do them any sooner than February. So the work plan includes an additional meeting for us on the 18th of February, which is positioned to be as late as we feel safe to go, hoping that we'll have those papers from EY. So we'll be going through the same process that we went through this evening for the 23-24 accounts. And because of the size of the pack that came this evening, we'll have the internal audit update at that point as well. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions, anyone? Are we comfortable that there's enough? Sorry, I'll invite Councillor Carvalho to go first.
Thank you, Chair. So I really just want to ask you, officers, are you comfortable with the position that you've had from the audit's perspective on the 22-23 with the work that you need to do to satisfy it from an audit perspective? And I'm really thinking about sort of the closing balances taking us forward into the opening balances, and whether if there transpires to be any material misstatements. So do you feel comfortable that what you are going to put forward to audit is going to be successfully audited to the same standard as in prior years?
So I think I'll take it first, Rach. I think we're pleased just to have a resolution. You know, so for the 22-23 accounts, that work was done a while ago, and we were absolutely on the money with our deadlines, which is why we even got a value for money audit, because while the sector was still trying to work out how it was going to get out of this problem, we were at least able to get some work done, which gives us assurance. Rachel and the team have confidence in those balances. I don't think we can do any more than we've done, because we find ourselves in a sector that's got itself in a little bit of a pickle. On the 23-24 accounts, our work was done back in August. It is all sitting with EY, and we have really satisfied ourselves in the quality of those accounts that have been out. They're on our website to have a look at. So we're working with what we're working with, Lorraine, and I think we've benefited from being as ready as we can be, and we've been able to grab any help or any attention from EY that we can. So it's not ideal, but we're in a pretty good position in that context.
Okay. Councillor Cornish.
Thank you. You touched on it already. I just wondered if the backlog and the situation at the moment in the sector, is that likely to impact the work programme following this?
So I think the reason that it's taken so long for the sector and central government and other bodies like CIPFA to agree a solution is the outcome had to be that we get to a reset point. And so essentially what EY have done is sign up to say, okay, if the final date for the 23-24 accounts is February, yes, we agree we can make it based on all these other things that we're going to do. And that was a very long negotiation. So I'm hopeful that they will meet it. We know that it's ready for them whenever they get to it.
Yeah, I think I'd add my concerns, or share the concerns expressed by Councillor Carvalho about kind of it's not that the council's done anything wrong at all. It's actually more the problems with the audit profession not being able to carry out full audits, and that puts the council potentially in a situation where somebody in the future says, well, you know, look at your accounts, are they adequate for assessing whether they could lend you some money, or other risks that the council might be assessed for. And it's clearly not a satisfactory position from the point of view of the council. I think what can we do about that? We're stuck, aren't we, with a process that is decided elsewhere. But I would like to I think we just need to put on record our thanks to officers for having completed the audit process and got a satisfactory outcome where there weren't any concerns identified by EY in their audit report, because I think that's actually a good outcome in the circumstances, but it isn't 100% what we would like to have seen. But I think it's just worth noting that.
Thank you, Councillor Lucraft, and I hope that in the way that Kevin introduced the report, that recognised how strongly Rachel and I have represented that we don't want somebody in 5 years' time to have any misunderstanding about what that disclaimed opinion means and how it's not anything to do with us or anything that we've done. So, thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. it's just a sort of a statement, but I'm sort of worried going forward, is we've had cyber attacks in the past on councils and things, and I think that's something that we're going to be, possibly in the future, there's going to be more of them, and some quite from certain countries. And I don't want to start naming countries here, but I just wanted to say that our risk, that we need to be well protected on that side. Thank you.
Do you want to respond to that? Because I know, I mean, we have actually put more resource into trying to protect ourselves against cyber attacks.
We have. I was just also going to say on behalf of Simon Hughes, he would absolutely share that view. And we've had new guidance over the weekend, which I think will be coming out in terms of members and some clear advice on what we can do. The threat level has now been moved to its highest possible level for public sector organisations. So it's something we must all be cognizant of, and that's why we have to change our passwords for the Wi-Fi and all of those things, because we have to stay on high alert. Rod, you're absolutely right.
Any other points, questions from members? Okay. Item 11, I don't think we had any... Oh, right, sorry. Can we take it to the vote first on item 10, please? So that's on page 243. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 11, there are no items raised. I think we'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you, everyone, for your patience, participation, and thank you to the officers for guiding us through the meeting.
Well done.